Okay, I'm here with, this is Simon, that's Tequila, and in this video I'm going to go over some tips that you can use if you have an adult dog that's not a big fan of the puppy. So Tequila's under 4 months right now. He is, how old again?
12.
12. So there's a huge difference in age. A lot of us think, well, they're going to be buddies automatically. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. A lot of times puppies are annoying to adult dogs. And they've kind of gotten into a couple fights. So the guardians have been what we call maintenance, separating them. But we want the dogs to practice doing things together that they both enjoy. But we have to make sure the dogs are not competing over resources and things like that. So the very first thing I want to do, I'm going to talk about several different things you can do. First thing I want to do is something I call click for looks. We're going to be using a clicker for this. See, I got his attention. So in order to use a clicker, have you ever used a clicker for him? So, okay. So most people, if you haven't done it, the first thing you do is prime the clicker. So I would click, then I give him a treat. So this means the click sound becomes what's called a precedent. This is called loading or priming the clicker. So you do this about 10 treats, maybe 3 or 4 different occasions. So you click, then give the dog the treat. So after a while, the dog hears the click and it's like, somebody's gonna be hooking me up with a treat. So now, one of the things I'd like the dogs to do, and I'm gonna talk about several things, is doing things together, but this is the first step that I usually do when dogs are not close to getting together. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna have him sit, and he doesn't have to sit. What I'm gonna do is when he looks at Tequila, I'm gonna click. This is why I call it click for looks. Tequila. And you really wanna say the word Tequila before you, or the dog's name before it goes in her mouth. So he's doing this accidentally. Tequila. So what I'm saying is looking at Tequila gets me a treat. Now, Tequila. Actually, my timing was bad. You should say, I guess I could do it a couple times. So if you don't want to do a marker, I would just click when he looks at Tequila. So all he has to do is look. He doesn't have to interact with her. She doesn't have to be in his face. We're going to do whatever distance they feel comfortable. If he's staring at her with a hard stare, that's not a good thing. Now you see, he's just looking at me because he's looking for the treat. When Tequila moves, that's going to draw his attention. Dogs are always attracted to movement. So that's looking at the guardian, not looking at the dog. So I'm withholding the click for that. The first several times the dog does this is accidental, but after the dog figures it out, I look at Tequila, I get a treat, I'm going to start looking at Tequila. Now when we do this, anytime you're doing any sort of exercise with dogs and there's any sort of friction between them, the best thing you do is increase the distance. The closer they are, the more intense it is. So this is actually pretty close, but we've been working with them for a while, so they're okay. So, Tequila. So I'm gonna click when the dog looks. I'm gonna say Tequila after the click, and then I'm gonna put the treat in the dog's mouth. So that just tells Simon, looking at Tequila gets me a treat. Now, this is the first stage that I do, and usually we have to have a big distance between them, but eventually you can get them closer and closer. I'm using a leash here because I want to make sure he doesn't go to him. This is not ideal to use a leash. I'd rather use a barrier, but we are short one camera person, so we didn't have somebody to handle this. So I wouldn't normally do this with a tether. This is just for demonstration purposes. So basically, it might be 20 feet apart, then after you practice, you get closer and closer, and this might take several practice sessions. Don't be greedy. If he stares at her or lunges at her, that kind of invalidates the thing. We want a very, very progressive, relaxed sort of progress. All right, so and you can do this in the house. So like you guys talked about not being able to have the dogs in the room together. Maybe you have them in the room and you have Tequila free and he's with one of you. And you can use an X pen or a leash. Just make sure there's not a tension on a leash. There's tension on a leash here. Let's take that off. So I'm gonna have the dog, invite the dog to come closer. Dogs will always pull against a tense leash, which is one of the reasons we don't like to use it. Sit for this particular thing. So basically, you can do this in the house. So every time I look at Tequila, some good things happen. Gradually, the dog starts becoming interested and he will start moving toward Tequila in a good thing. The one thing to be careful about, if I have one dog here and one dog here and I hold one treat, the chance of them fighting over the treat is higher. So if I'm gonna give 2 treats, I'm gonna go like this, so I can control how close they are to one another. And you have an amazing underbite. Yes, you do. Okay, so he likes to come out in the morning, so that's what I call click for looks. The next thing I like to do is, that I'm gonna suggest in this case, we have a giant backyard, and there's a nice fence line. When Simon comes out, he wants to go and investigate all the critters in the morning that have come and invaded his turf. And he sniffs a lot. Sniffing is great, it burns energy, it's relaxing, it's comforting, and it helps dogs acquire confidence. So basically what I would do is I would bring him out and let him do his thing, and probably I would bring him on, I would actually let him be free. So in this case, he's running free, and he goes like basically behind the camera and starts there and sniffs around. So after he's gotten some good sniffs in, I'm going to bring Tequila out with a treat, or with a leash. And I'm going to lead her to where he was, and we're basically going to follow them. Now, if he stops and stares at her, or if she's uncomfortable approaching him, she's going to be a great barometer, well, wherever she is. If she doesn't want to approach him, that's fine. That's why, but we want to keep her on the leash so she doesn't go where we don't want. We want her to kind of follow him, but we're not going to pull. So the idea is, and if you have to, you can have treats like this and just walk, and just have her walk around, but instead of giving her the treats, I would throw it on the ground in the area that, so we want to promote her sniffing. And something else you can do is get some shredded cheese. If your treat is too high value and she's not interested in him or anything else, that's kind of invalidating. We want her to be the treat to be a motivator, but not override everything. So basically, you're going to follow them around every morning. And at first, you might have to be 20 feet apart for him to feel comfortable and not staring. But eventually, just like Click for Looks, you can eventually collapse that distance. And eventually, he might be walking with her. Now, if there's a rodent or something they find, that can create a fight as well. So be careful. Until they're very, very Watusi, we don't want to let them go for the same thing because that might not turn out great. So another thing that we could do is we could also do, Michael's over here has a rope, something to play fetch with. Now Tequila is not really interested in fetching. We try just a short little one. Some others are not in the mood. Right now she's not in the mood. Normally she likes to fetch. So we could also, when she's moving, that's going to be a little bit harder for him. So sometimes that's a little bit more challenging because she's moving around. Now if they have enough distance, she should be fine. But if he, so if we get her playing fetch and he's looking at her, we can do a version of Click for Looks for that. We want to just have him see when she moves, good things happen for me. And so we can do this with playing Frisbee or playing fetch, a whole bunch of different activities. So that would be another little activity that we could do with them together. Another one I like to do more inside. Now when you're inside, you're looking for stares. Typically his first warning is going to be kind of like hanging out, nice and loose. And then when something happens he doesn't like, he's probably going to go like this and get stiff and stare. Most of us don't recognize that. And then he bares his teeth, and then he grumbles a little bit, and his tail goes up, and his hackles come up, and his ears go forward. He's like, I just told you 12 times, I don't want you that close, and then I lunge at them. So that's where we're on the road that we're going to. Laura talked to you a little bit about the tail. So if the tail is up, well, in his case, it's more of a rounded tail. But if you see that tail up and still and stiff, and he's staring, that's a bad combination. So we want to try to redirect him away from her and give him a good recall. Good coming to my guardian gets me a treat. So the dog is more and more inclined to want to do that. What I'd like to do is eventually inside, if we can facilitate it where he's not staring and we use that X pen, we could both give them a bully stick on opposite sides of the fence. Now if they're staring or stiff, make sure you pull it apart. If the dog takes the bully stick, or she takes the bully stick and comes over next to the fence, drill a hole in the back of the bully stick, get a dumbbell and zip it in the dumbbell and put it on the floor where Mike is, several feet away. So we facilitate increasing that distance. What I want the dogs to do is I want them to practice doing things together that they both enjoy, and doing it in a structured way so that there's no staring, there's no stiffness, there's no barking or lunging or teeth baring or any of the rest of that stuff. And eventually we'll be able to collapse that distance and get them closer and closer together. So you can use bully sticks for that. You can use cow kneecaps, Kongs, all sorts of different stuff. Now we do this in puppy class, something we call pair treating. Here, Tequila. Now see how Tequila is kind of staying right there? That's her way of saying, this is as close as I feel like getting. Sit. So see how I was able to give them both the treat, but at whatever distance. Now if you have a puppy, sometimes puppies are just kind of not really paying attention to things. Everything's new and they're goofy and they think everybody wants to play with them. They run right up to another dog. Front-facing approach is very confrontational for dogs. See how they're kind of at a T. She's facing this way, he's facing that way. That's much more relaxing for her because he didn't come right up to her face. So the idea is we'd like inside to have those dogs practice chewing on bully sticks or whatever it is in the room, but with a barricade or a tether so that the humans can feel comfortable knowing these dogs cannot get at each other. So I don't have to worry about it. And that lets you let your guard down, because if you're stressed, you'll actually make your dog stressed as well. Now he being an older dog and he's got some arthritis, so we don't want to walk him a lot, but walking dogs together is also a wonderful activity because they're moving forward. There's a lot of distraction. You hear the sounds out there in the background, there's smells, all sorts of this different stuff. So what I'd like to do, I'm going to talk about that in a sec. So what I want to do is I want to basically go for a walk together. And again, for him, he's going to go for like maybe a 2-minute walk and then come back. and then drop him off and take her for a longer walk if you want to. So now, and I'd like you to try to do that on a daily basis, maybe in the morning and the evening. So again, we're going to try to, all these things I want to try to do 2 or 3 or 4 times a day. Now, I'm not doing click for looks. So click is indicate something that you did what I wanted. In that case, getting sniffed got you a treat. So the click is indicate that's what, so if I want to teach a dog to sit, so I click when the butt hits the ground. That's how I would use the click. So the click is for the action that you want. Eventually you phase this out, but this is very distinct sound, and a lot of dogs, if you watch him, well, that wasn't the response I'm looking for, but usually they do this enough, they just stop with their little snap and look at you. So if we can have kind of practice that inside, where the dogs are in the room together and hanging out, they're practicing being buddies. Now, the little interaction I did before, anytime that she comes over and interacts with him or he interacts with her in a positive way, I want to make sure that he gets a reward for that. It doesn't always have to be a treat. It could be petting, it could be affection. A lot of dogs like getting scratched in their butt here, behind the ears for a lot of dogs, underneath here on the chest or whatever it is. So we just want to say, every time I interact with Tequila, good stuff happens to me. And at the same time, we want to prevent any potential conflict. The idea is to really go about 2 months without having any conflict with them whatsoever, because we've been very conservative about it. And then I keep on using all these political terms. It is November 3rd. It is election night. But the idea is to be very conservative so that we make nothing but steady progress into positives and no negatives. Now, that's kind of the stuff for them. I'm going to throw a little bonus in here. She doesn't like going in the kennel. And I would have preferred that her guardians use a long-term confinement area. If you don't know what those are, if you have a puppy, get one. It sets it up. At this point, she's probably a little bit too big for it, but she doesn't like going in the kennel, and so the guardians kind of have to really overly treat her. Probably because she spends no time in the kennel unless her guardians are about to leave or go do something where she can't participate. So the kennel starts to represent a negative. So what I would do is I would go into the kennel, and let's say this is the kennel and this is the front door to the kennel. I would be on the side here and put my hand through it. She has to come in the kennel to come and get the treat, and I give her the treat. And I could also throw the treats in the kennel. I could zip tie a bully stick in the back of the kennel, so the only way she can chew on it is inside it. When you're doing these things though, anytime she's going to the kennel, I would like to have the guardian sitting next to the kennel. So grab your iPad, watch a movie, read a little bit, try to spend a couple of minutes every day where going in the kennel is a good thing. And if you have the bully stick in there, she's chewing on it, you're sitting right outside, you got your pillows. Now the dog is practicing being in the kennel, and now every time I go in the kennel, it doesn't mean something that I'm gonna be restrained or left alone. Now right now the guardian's word is cabo for the kennel, but because she doesn't like that, I think it's probably a little bit confusing. Also, the word cabo means eat and go to the kennel. Every dog command word should be for a single action only. So I would come up with a new word for going in the kennel, because this one probably has a negative association. And I would also come up with a different word for feeding. You could also take a lick mat, put that in there. Every time she gets a new toy, she should find it in the kennel. So we want to create these positive associations where she goes in there. And if she gets in the kennel, let's say the kennel is this way and there's the door swings here. So I get her to come in the kennel and I'm feeding treats to the side. So I give her a treat, and then she takes a step there and I say her name, and then I show her the treat and she comes back into the kennel. And I give her another treat. And I keep doing, and at first I might be giving treats like this, sorry buddy, really bang, 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 bang. And pretty much like a 1 second delay. Then after a while, it might be 1 second, treat, 1, 2, 3, 4, treat. So what we want to do is prevent her from exiting the kennel, but not by blocking it, not by closing the door, just by making something good happen for staying inside the kennel. And also the last little thing, and I guess I'm going to revert back to these guys together. When you're going to get them together, a wonderful time to do this is when she has this energy. See how beautiful her energy? Now she's half asleep right now. After puppy class would be a great time. Once she comes home, she's going to be all full of beans and she's going to settle down like this. You guys talked about not having the dogs together in the living room. After puppy class, I would make that a ritual. After puppy class, once she comes home and gets some water and rest, then we bring Simon in and we do a family gathering. We can use the leash if we need to, But at this point, I think they're probably going to be fairly comfortable. And if you need to use the leash, use it. If you need to use the X Pen, use it. I would recommend you guys probably order an X Pen. They're about $35 to $45 on Amazon. And there you go, buddy. And it's just, you'll use it a lot initially, and then you can eventually get rid of it. But they're not that expensive, and it'll be really beneficial. So this way, the dogs can kind of, again, practice being together when we've already taken care of her physical needs, so she feels nice and comfortable. We're done with the video, just about, so I can let you go. She's like, I want to pick up the leash, which she was doing earlier. So the idea is to take advantage of that time when she is tired. That's a wonderful time for you to get the dogs together. Now, again, keep some distance. If you have them both on the couch, have one either side of you. The humans and then the dogs on the outside. Speaking of which, there's a toy you get for a dog. It has a pole, and then it's got one of these things attached to the pole on a bungee. So the dog can actually pull it and run around the pole and play with itself, but have a nice game of tug of war. And let's not chew on the leash. Thank you, sweetheart. That's the metal part. That's not the part you're supposed to be eating. So look for opportunities to help the dogs practice being together. Walking, clicking for looks, the morning, and during the winter time, you might have to come and scoop the exterior of your property line so that the dogs can actually find that sniffs on the ground. And for that part, if she's having difficulty paying attention, grab some finely shredded cheese. Make sure he doesn't see that you have it, and then when he's walking behind him, sprinkle a little cheese, and she'll go and she's sniffing the ground. That's really important, because if she's sniffing the ground, that tells him that she's not challenging him, and that's something dogs do when they're very calm. So if he turns around and sees that she's sniffing the ground, he's gonna feel comfortable. The only thing to be careful about is if he knows it's the cheese and comes for it, that can be a conflict. So we want to make sure we don't do that. All right, sit. Yes. Sit. Yes. This is Tequila. This is Simon. These are some tips and tricks you can use if you have an adult dog and a puppy and they don't get along as well as you like.